I'm Eike Rapsson. I'm a Chief Architect of Data Fabric at NetApp. I spoke at the last Cloud Tech Field Day, and in that presentation, I went over some of the Data Fabric strategy, but without being able to show you anything. So now I actually want to show you some of the stuff that our team has been working on. We work within the Cloud Data Services business unit under Anthony. And so some of the services that we've been rolling out now in the last year or so are some of the same services that you'll see rolled into what we are essentially doing where we're productizing the Data Fabric. So you may be familiar with NetApp's Data Fabric image here. This is sort of what people think Data Fabric is in larger terms. Essentially be able to move your data anywhere, whether it's on-prem, the enterprise data center, or to the public cloud, so private, public, and enterprise data centers. But the problem has been, and the feedback from the customers has been that, this is really great. You're the only ones that are actually doing this sort of technology so that we can go to the cloud or go from the cloud and back. But it hasn't really been a simple operation, and it hasn't really been a simple way of taking advantage of all the other things that you have in your Data Fabric. So we started with sort of trying to not redefine the Data Fabric, but sort of sharpen the message. And we now talk about Data Fabric being something that simplifies the integration and orchestration of data, in particularly for applications and analytics in clouds, across clouds and on-premises, for the reason of digital transformation. And when I say that, what I really mean is that we want to solve these challenges that have been defined by the industry as the main 5 challenges of data management. And the last time I spoke, I showed you a little bit about orchestration. I showed a little overview of our application orchestration features. And today I want to show you a new service that we are working on, which effectively will become the incarnation of Data Fabric from NetApp. We wouldn't be able to do the things that we are doing today in the Cloud Data Services business unit without the great IP and great work of both ONTAP teams, HCI, and all the innovation that's been going on with NetApp for a long time. So we build on top of those. So on the lowest tier here, you see data storage. That means data storage on-prem. It means in the cloud. It could be virtualized. It could be software-defined. Essentially, any of the data storage solutions that we have. And then we build on top of that. So in the last year or so, we've rolled out Cloud Volumes and Azure NetApp Files on all 3 major hyperscalers, and we'll continue to innovate there. We've also added Cloud Backup as a new service, Cloud Insights. We have a service assessment service that takes a look at your cloud spend, your cloud behavior. There's a ton of new services, and you can just see that we feel that this year we've built the foundational services that we can then run with. So you can imagine we sort of built our EC2 and S3 like Amazon had to do before they could build everything else on top of that. And that's kind of what we're going to be exposing as a service. So combining all of these things, data storage, data services, orchestration, integration, and cloud controls, and then management and monitoring on top of that.
Did you actually build the assessment service that you talked about, or is that something you partnered with? You did.
Yeah, and you have to forgive my naming of some products in here because it seems that some names changed just before Insight.
Shocking.
So shocking, exactly. So my demo might have an older name for some of the services, but So let me switch to, I'm going to cheat a little bit here and use a pre-recorded one. But after this, I'll actually dive in a little deeper into some of the aspects. So just like any of the other services that NetApp offers in the cloud, we are building a new service for cloud.netapp.com that we call Cloud Orchestrator. And the Cloud Orchestrator is really the incarnation of exposing all of the data fabric controls that we already have within our products, and then adding a few layers on top of that that increase both the value of the data fabric and also gives you more visibility and control over all of the aspects or all of the services that would connect in a multi-cloud way to the data fabric.
Eki, that previous screen that you had, you picked the different services. Do you need a license to run those, or you just start paying for them and you get them?
Yeah. So all the services on cloud.netapp.com are consumption services.
Okay.
So just go on cloud.netapp.com, register, and then you can start to use these services. So, for example, a couple of weeks back, we announced the acquisition of StackPoint. And that same day, we launched a service on cloud.netapp.com under the new name NetApp Kubernetes Service, NKS. Yeah. And I'll refer to that here. So if I sort of remind you, what were the topics there that I wanted to solve, the first one was data visibility. And so data visibility is not just about seeing where your data is. It's also about how is your data doing? Is it cold? Is it hot data? Do I have waste somewhere? That sort of thing too. So we've leaned on ActiveIQ, which is an extension of NetApp's auto support, essentially the call home feature of all NetApp products that bring us metadata that allow us to help you actually reduce the number of issues you would have with storage or networking or any other type of service that's related to our products. But it's also a data lake that we can use to use intelligent data analytics to compare how you are doing versus other people or other companies in your field. So by doing that and running these assessments and analysis, we can actually start to create new services on top of that. But the first thing I need to do is actually discover all of my assets. So in the Cloud Orchestrator or Data Fabric Orchestrator, I click Discover by ActiveIQ, and it actually finds a few more systems for me. I can also add them by a code that I use, similar to like Netflix style activate by code on Apple TV and such. But as soon as I've done that, I actually gain access to these assessments and analytics. So for the devices, systems, and services that it discovered here, because remember, services are also part of the data fabric. It's not just systems. I have discovered through this portal, through the Cloud Orchestrator, I've discovered that I have a bunch of cold data here in one of my locations. And so the data fabric offers me an opportunity to actually tier those right off to object storage in the cloud. And so you might have access to one of these public clouds, and you can just register or put in your credentials there. Or if you don't, and you want to get started quicker, we will offer a hosted bucket, object storage bucket, in our own accounts. And you can just consume that by giving us an encryption key to use. And that's really it. Like, we discovered that. This is just one of the first sort of services we'll roll out, which uses intelligence for tiering. We have other services, including Cloud Insights, that give you a lot of data around waste in public clouds. So, for example, underutilized VMs and such. Another thing that's important about the data fabric is that we sort of set ourselves up for a little bit of trouble when we integrated so deeply into the public clouds. So cloud volumes, otherwise known as Azure NetApp files in Azure, we call it cloud volumes here, and we're talking about all the hyperscaler versions of that. Each one of those is so tightly integrated into the cloud providers that you actually access them through the cloud provider credentials and the APIs. So you can think of the cloud orchestrator, it needs actually to be a consumer of those services on behalf of the customer. And we want to do this because we want to have a single API endpoint for our customers to build, migrate data, and handle everything around cloud volumes through a single API and a single UI. So that's what we've done here. We've created a user interface and an API that allows us to create a volume on any one of these services just out of the box. So a part of that, yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, with that data tiering, you're just doing a back-end data move. The front-end correlation still has to be maintained manually or however we choose to do it, right?
So what we're leveraging there are fabric pools. So the built-in feature in ONTAP to tier to object storage. We're just making it easier for you to know about it and to actually enable it.
Right.
Yeah. And so here we've created a cloud volume on Azure. We've actually set a snapshot policy to it. So we have a way of doing asynchronous snapshots that just happen in the background. But obviously, you can also do ad hoc snapshotting. Now, cloud volumes are great. You have basic, standard, extreme performance. There's nothing like it in the public cloud, not even from the public cloud providers themselves. You may have seen that. I urge you to look at the both keynotes from Insight, where Anthony Lee took a look at the actual performance of these in the public clouds. But data without compute is not really that useful, right? So how do we want to use this data in the near future? Well, we think that the overall technology that has won in the public cloud, and I kind of like to call the operating system for cloud applications, is Kubernetes. And so today you can go to cloud.netapp.com and you can start to use the NetApp Kubernetes service. And you can deploy clusters across all the hyperscalers. And it's really easy. You just pick a provider, you enter your public cloud credentials, and now within a cloud orchestrator, we've actually added the feature here of connecting then to those cloud volumes that I was just creating. So now I can.
So a lot of these hyperscalers have their own Kubernetes services that you could take advantage of. Is this in addition to those, or?
Yeah. So actually, when I'm doing this, I can choose. So I can create a cluster on top of the VMs within a hyperscaler. And basically, that creates a cluster that's completely managed by our service. Or I can deploy on one of the Kubernetes services that they already have, and I can enhance those. So we support both models. And here, I'm actually deploying an application, and I can deploy an application on any of those with one click, too. So we're both doing managed clusters. And some of the benefits are we manage etcd for you in a highly available. We have a single click button to enable backup of everything that you have running in the cluster, including configuration. We can automatically snapshot EBS volumes, and we'll automatically snapshot cloud volumes and backup them too for the cluster. In addition to that, one of the major features of NKS is the ability to easily apply a service mesh across all of your clusters. So you can effectively create a single cluster out of multiple ones, whether it's region to region in the same cloud provider, or actually between cloud providers. And so that's kind of the first step, and you can do all of that today. What I'm showing here is sort of the future vision of when we combine all of this into a single orchestration pane. And you may have noticed that when I was creating, it went by a little fast, but when I was creating a cluster there and when I was creating Cloud Volumes, we also had NetApp HCI on the list. So what we're going to do there is we're going to extend our cloud orchestration into your own data centers if you've got hyperconverged infrastructure. Or like Brad called it today in his keynote, hybrid cloud infrastructure. And I think that's actually a pretty good name for it because that's effectively what we're going to do. If you would install an HCI box in your data center, what we will do is during the installation process or after the installation process, you essentially opt in to make this a region within your data fabric. And so when you do that, what we do is that we sort of call home through a secure method. We don't have to actually open any ports into your data center at all. We use some proprietary technology to solve that. And then when you've done that, you can actually join the data fabric.
That's proprietary technology you'd be glad to explain to my security guys, right?
Sure. It's not that proprietary. Basically, we use a public message queue, and so we're always pulling. We're pulling from on-premises from the cloud. We're not going from cloud in.
And so if my firewall has an anything out aloud rule, I'm good. Yes. But if my security guys are really paranoid, you need to give me details.
Sure. Yeah. And I think probably in a 6 months or in a year, we'll be talking about like the specific implementations and security features that we'll build into this. But the other way around is also through our Active IQ discovery, I can find my HCI box on here in the list, and I can do the reverse. So I can join the fabric from the cloud here, but in the same way, this really puts just a sort of a join token on the message queue, and then the HCI can pick that up and then join the fabric. Now, when I join, I'm not going to be able, at least not in the first iteration, I'm not going to be able to just magically join an HCI box that I've configured in some crazy, very, very, very specific way. So that's why Anthony in his keynote, he talked about applying standard configurations. And really, now that we will have standard configurations, what we're really doing is we're deploying the service delivery engine. That's the power behind Cloud Volumes and all of that. We are effectively deploying that onto that HCI box, which makes it equal to a regional controller in the public cloud. And we need standard configurations to be able to do that.
Does that instantiate as a VM on that HCI appliance?
VMs, and then we're doing bare metal. So we're starting with VMs, yes, and then we're moving over to bare metal.
And when you say HCI, is that exclusively to I bought the packaged ACI solution and not I bought SolidFire?
Yes, HCI. So we're starting with that. We're definitely feeling some large interest in getting that to FlexPod 2 and possibly other configurations.
My question's around the sort of security aspect with this sort of tool. You don't go and take over a HCI cluster that somebody's already been using, for something else. Because this is now going to be, in essence, the control plane for everything within your environment. The role-based access needs to be there to stop malicious use.
So exactly. So one of the key things here is that none of the systems automatically join the fabric, right? You opt in. So somebody with the access rights to opt in needs to opt it in.
Yeah, but if I want a guy that maybe only does the AWS job, I don't want him to know about what's going on in Azure and vice versa.
Right. So within the Cloud Orchestrator, we'll have both we'll have organizational management, team management, workspaces, and we'll tie that into RBAC, so role-based access controls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels very much like this is how we'd like to do it, but it's then trying to translate that into business processes and how the organization is actually going to
Yeah, absolutely.
day-to-day business.
Yeah, it's a very fair point. So what I didn't mention in the beginning of this is that I'm kind of looking at the Cloud Orchestrator from like a super user perspective where I see everything. Right. But definitely some of these things would not be, well, maybe not hidden, but not accessible based on the profile that I'm working under.
Okay.
How do you manage people that have access to multiple active IQs? So service providers, partners.
So so we have a solution for that. So in the step before, let me just jump back here. So in the step before I actually logged into the Cloud Orchestrator, we have, like, depending on your login, we find your entitlements and all of that. So if you're actually a reseller or partner, you'll be able to manage the data fabric, a data fabric for a customer too. Okay. So it's inclusive of partners. And we've actually started doing, like with NKS, we're going to be allowing partners to white label that and bring their own sort of additions to NKS. Because NKS has the ability to do trusted charts, so you can actually bring your own applications to it. And then we think that partners might want to do that to, better service their customers and sort of keep them in the fold, so to speak. So what we kind of walked through hits on most of these points here. I'm going to show you a little bit more. The first one was data visibility. So I'm able now to see everything that I have, whether it's on-prem or in the public cloud, in some service that's compatible with the data fabric. And I'll explain that a little bit better.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that one.
Yeah, so, but what I didn't show you was cloud backup. We're actually rolling that out pretty soon. But the thing I want to talk about next is really the data integration and orchestration piece. Because to me, that's really where we start to use all the data for useful things that are critical to the business.
Heikki, lots of Kubernetes installations out there also use BOSH on top of it for high availability and things of that nature.
Yeah, so our Kubernetes service, which manages the cluster for you, so you don't have to, has built-in features for high availability. So, for example, allowing you to have multiple masters. We have the ability to do intelligent routing. So you could have essentially 2 clusters and completely fail over to the cluster that's running okay. But we also have something called scaling groups, which you can, in the basic version of that, you can use that to pick a certain type of instance that you want to scale the cluster on. And we do auto-scaling. So auto-scaling takes care of not just auto-scaling, but if a node dies, then we replace it with a new node. We move the workloads from the older node if we can, and then instantiate them again. And now once you have persistent volumes provided by Cloud Volumes on that, you have an additional high availability because obviously Cloud Volumes are highly available and highly performant. So we think we're sort of, that we're solving a couple of problems there for the application developers because storage is really hard with containers. And there's always also that dirty little secret in the cloud providers around persistent volumes. You can't actually mount that many persistent volumes to a VM. Like there's a limit to that. And there's no limit to the NFS version of that or the SMB version of that. So we also solve some of the things that application developers might not have hit yet because they haven't had a really good persistent storage story in Kubernetes. So in the console there, in the Cloud Orchestrator,
does the Kubernetes service require Trident as part of it?
No, doesn't require it.
So Trident could be added or not, depending on what service.
Yes, exactly. You can use it today with Trident. When we say that we are building support for Cloud Volumes, what we mean is that we want to automate the whole thing, like signing you up and activating it and installing Trident and configuring it for you. So you can actually use it today. We have customers we've been showing that to already.
With that, do you have a private repository as well?
Yes. So there's when you create a cluster on NKS, there's a button called Add Solutions, and one of the solutions there is a private repository that you can just deploy and start using. And there are actually a bunch of very, very useful applications that have been sort of certified, and we guarantee that they work, including GitLab and some of the useful tools. Like in the demo, we showed deployment of TensorFlow. And actually, yesterday, we just made a new version, not a new version, but we announced new features for NKS. And this is, by the way, the second feature release since the acquisition of NKS. And yesterday, we added support for GPU computing. So now you can actually easily create clusters that support NVIDIA-based GPU computing. And it actually makes it easy for you to mix and match. So you can, for example, have a cluster that has one scaling group that's regular compute, and then another one that has GPU. And that way, when you select an application that can consume GPU, you can actually automatically have it land on the GPU nodes. And those could scale independently of the compute ones.
Am I going to be able to consume this from services like Azure DevOps or other CI/CD?
Yeah, exactly. So NKS, for example, and all of this, NKS already has Terraform. It's Ansible. There's a bunch of DevOps tools that you can use already with that, and we'll make sure that we have that for all of our services. And we actually have Terraform for Cloud Volumes already, and then you can do a lot of these things with the cloud provider tools, because remember, at least on Azure and on Google, we're native services. So you can use their tools and all of the tools that are available to those APIs directly with Cloud Volumes.
Okay, so in Azure DevOps, for example, there's a marketplace.
Yeah.
I'd recommend you put some marketplace add-ons in where I can drop it into my pipeline.
Okay, yeah.
But then again, isn't it yet another portal that needs to be addressed by the IT team to provide for the organization? I'm kind of asking myself, in organizations I come, we have vCloud Director or vRealize Automation or something like that. How does that go with this? Is there some sort of collaboration between the two?
So specifically for that question, I can tell you that the first iteration of the HCI on-prem with the service delivery engine on top of it will run on VMware. So we will
replace the need of vRealize. That's what it sounds like.
We don't need.
No.
We're not trying to replace VM management at all.
But you wouldn't necessarily need it though. If you're provisioning.
Yeah. So basically, we need the APIs to vCenter, and that's actually what HCI provides us with. And then we use that to bootstrap the service delivery engine on-prem. And once that's done, we can start using essentially the HCI box just like another cloud provider. And internally, we use whatever API, whatever VM management we want on the back end.
Got it.
So we're starting with VMware, and then we're doing bare metal. And we might do other VM management tools in the background too. But our focus here is on application analytics and not on necessarily VM management, because we think that's pretty much solved.
Your
problem.
target is really toward engineers, DevOps.
So it's actually a few. So we think that the targets are storage admins that are becoming sort of cloud storage architects, because you need to think about the whole big picture when you're talking about storage now, because it's not just storage on-prem and in the cloud,
right.
It's also storage in on-premise and cloud, and it's connected to something. It's connected to the applications.
You have a cloud management platform that you've developed here.
Yes, well, it's a cloud. I would say it's a cloud orchestration platform.
Okay. Well,
so Let me actually, I think it's a very good question, and actually it's my next slide. So what is the scope of the cloud orchestrators? and this is sort of, if you strip away all the UI, all the user interface stuff, this is kind of what it boils down to. So what we're trying to do is actually, produce an extensible data fabric API that includes multi-cloud discovery of all your assets and your services. It helps orchestrate data movement, and it helps orchestrate and combine the use of these services. So when I say services, I mean cloud volumes, for example. Those are spread across multiple cloud providers. We also provide that user interface, which is the cloud orchestrator, but you can use all of this without ever logging into that. So the user interfaces that we usually do in these cloud services, they're all stateless. So it just means that we made a nice way for you to do this stuff if you don't want to use the API or you just want to, discover some new things. And in some cases, it's much better to have a UI. Like for example, for the cloud assessment things, you can't really represent that very well in a command line tool or through an API. But we also will take care of your multi-cloud identities. So because we have to do that because we need to talk to the multiple cloud providers.
The thing I can see here is it ends up becoming Shadow IT 2.0.
That's where I was going, right? Yeah.
So I was thinking of the corollary, which is, you guys are a great data company. Why do I want you managing my compute? Don't I want somebody else for that?
Yeah. So you are managing your compute. We're not managing your compute for you. Everything that we run here runs in your own accounts. So if you strip away all of our stuff. What I really mean there is, why do I want to use NetApp's tools to manage compute instances? So what do you want to do?
I would think there's somebody more about compute that I would want that from.
So HCI is compute and storage. We're already selling compute.
Maybe another question related to that, which I had, was you're positioning this tool as a SaaS data management platform.
Yes.
And what is the link with NetApp's hardware? Is there any integration, not just integration points, but any requirements to run specific hardware? And to which extent do you still see yourselves as, being like a NetApp only like contained solution, or do you want to bring in whatever customers have and tie it into something which is just NetApp?
So we'll start with the NetApp portfolio, but when I say extensible, I mean extensible. So you could imagine something like in our sort of discovery, the data discovery part of the orchestrator. I mean, there's nothing stopping us from creating like a plugin that would show you your box.com stuff. It's all just data, but it needs to be in the fabric. We need to be able to do some elemental things. It needs to be movable. We need to have methods to move the data. We need to have methods to discover the data. We need to have methods to control the data, have access to it, right? So we are on a level above here. I would say we're a level above the file management. Like we'll have services that do some actions and learnings on files, but the data fabric scope is actually a level above. So we see systems, volumes, snapshots, services, and then we have APIs that allow you to not only control those, but to add metadata to any entity that we can see within the data fabric.
So that means that you, in the future, NetApp can go to customers which have been historically with another vendor and kind of buy them in on the data layer and then try to displace them at the, let's say, hardware layer.
Yeah, exactly, because we're not trying to create like the Uber orchestrator that does everything. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to make your experience and your data fabric or data fabrics visible to you and then controllable and then add more value to them. So one of those things is actually, it's one liner there, global metadata API. This is actually really important. Once you have visibility over all of your assets or all of your services that can work with the data fabric, you can start to label things. So if you think of labeling or tagging, this is actually a key concept to the data fabric, because once I'm able to either label a whole system like, let's say, an ONTAP box or a SolidFire box, or label a specific volume, the data fabric will make sure that that label is stuck to that entity for the rest of the life of that entity. That means that if I would copy the volume, snapshot it, move it somewhere else, I still have that reference to that particular original volume.
Is that tagging based on VMware?
No.
Center?
So this tagging lives outside of all of the systems. The systems just need to have a unique identifier for whatever we will tag. And the reason why we do that is because once we have sort of done that, then we can start to do macro operations and macro workflows. So why would I, for example, go into every single cluster and set up a backup schedule and all of that, when I could just click the site, add a label to it, and then say all sites that are labeled production, back that up, or clusters that have particular types of data that cannot leave, like they are under GDPR or something like that.
That's what I was going to ask.
Label the things, create rules that will circuit break an API call that's asking it to move that data out of that data center based on labels and rules. So this is actually a really important part of the data fabric, and this is something that's
So does it have a
brand new.
high dependency then on Cloud Insights to understand those sorts of moves and so on?
Can you repeat that?
So does it have a dependency then on the Cloud Insights?
No,
piece?
no, it doesn't.
Okay.
So Cloud Insights, so all of these services, like if you just log into the system and you just want to use the discovery and some of the assessment parts, you can use it just for that.
Yeah.
If you want to have applications, you have to launch a cluster, right? So you can place the application somewhere. And this really comes down to like, what are the core services of the data fabric? So we define services like Cloud Insights, Cloud Accelerator. There's a bunch of other ones that we're either have launched or are building. We define those as data fabric compatible services.
Okay.
And obviously, all of the previous IP that's already in NetApp that supports the data fabric through something like SnapMirror are also part of this. And they don't need to be like upgraded to be able to participate here.
So data fabric compatibility means it's going to have a NetApp logo on it.
At the beginning, yes.
Okay, at the beginning. So there's somewhere.
That's where the extensible API comes in. Right?
I'm trying to put these things together here. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of tend to look at it like internally, we are starting, like we've delivered these cloud services, and we've figured out a way to have them interoperate. We have cloud.netapp.com, which is actually more than just a portal. It's actually a single sign-on authority for us. And if you are registered to one of the services, you can actually pull API tokens to talk to the other ones too. So that was like the step one. And now step two, we want to be able to pull some information. For example, let's say within this, I've got Cloud Insights, and I click Cloud Insights. It's not the full Cloud Insights. It's going to give me some hints on what I could do with Cloud Insights based on my data, and then I can go ahead and use the actual full service. So not everything has to be in here, except for the core services, which are Cloud Volumes and Cloud Backup, multi-cloud, and that includes on-prem.
Got it.
The NetApp Kubernetes service and what we call Fabric applications, which is really our application orchestration layer, which I showed you a little bit in the last Tech Field Day. And then there's a new thing that we're adding here, which we call Fabric Flows. And Fabric Flows is kind of where we start tying everything together in a pretty cool way.
What are the little logo on the deck earlier? On the what's that?
Yeah. So I'll go through this fairly quickly. I know we don't have a lot of time. So on the data orchestration and integration side, this is kind of where you start really using your data and to transform sort of your DevOps environments into something that are even more valuable. And you can really stop thinking about like there's cloud and on-prem. It's all your data fabric. If it lives in the data fabric, you can orchestrate and integrate with it. So the first thing we have there is data sync. And data sync is really about setting up sync relationships. Today we have two products that really do this well. One of them is SnapMirror. So you can SnapMirror between places, and we just announced synchronous snap mirror today. And we've got Cloud Sync. So Cloud Sync allows me to copy data between pretty much any source. It's actually used more to get data out of our competitors' gear into Cloud Volumes and other services than it is today used for, particularly for NetApp. The second thing is that we want to build and run data fabric applications on fully managed clusters. We don't want, I don't want, as a developer, I don't want to be running clusters. I want to have clusters, I want to have features from clusters, but I want something that manages that for me, and it actually becomes cheaper than some of the managed cloud services in the public cloud.
So talking about price and licensing, how does it work? Because you have many services, many different features. Is that per capacity? Is that per?
So yeah, I mean, it differs between services, but as an example with NKS, it's simply a surcharge on the VMs that you run. So it's very, very scalable. It actually comes out to be a lot cheaper than some of the cloud native services, which is another reason to use NKS.
And building on top of that, how can your customers see or monitor their consumption, what they're spending on that?
Yeah.
Do you have a panel for that?
So yeah, exactly. So Cloud Insights provides that panel and that insight. So we're deeply integrating Cloud Insights with not just Kubernetes, but with sort of the whole management portal here. And Cloud Insights can actually reach into all of the clouds, any one of the clouds now, and they've got connectors for tens or hundreds of different applications and hardware.
So NetApp's finally going to sell some OCI then?
So it's interesting. Like Cloud Insights is really, it's a new service that is available to everybody. It's a freemium model. You can actually start using it today and reap benefits from it instantly if you point it towards, let's say, your AWS infrastructure, to just find out if you are utilizing it in a good way or an optimized way. It also allows you to set up alerts. So it's both monitoring system and analytics system, and really doing those customized full data fabric monitoring, alerting, and queries is sort of the forte of Cloud Insights, and a multi-cloud tool. So while OCI is very, very powerful, it is, price-wise, is basically accessible to the larger enterprises. But here we have something that, a single developer would want to use that to actually gather information and debug his applications and his accounts on-prem and public cloud.
Applications. That's that service catalog that was available to when you were running Kubernetes, NetApp Kubernetes service. You could deploy different fabric applications. Is that?
Yes. So let me show you. So the last thing is visually design and run workflows that mash up these services, and I'll show you that.
So is that sort of a Lambda kind of feature?
You could use Lambda with it. I'll have a demo of that if I manage to get through this. So I won't stop a long time on each one of these because many of you have seen it before, and if you want to see some of this stuff, some of it's in the keynote already. That was at Insight. But here I have my data sync relationships, and we call it data sync here because we would pick the best protocol for the job at hand. Cloud Sync might be the one, it might be something else. And then we got applications and cluster orchestration. And when I say that, this is really what we're concerned about. We're talking about container-based applications or workloads. So this could be HPC jobs. It could be actually multi-tiered applications. It could be a single container even. Or even like databases and other things like that. Then we got the NetApp Kubernetes service. So that's the cluster automation, both in configuration, deployment, auto-scaling, backup, and all of that. And then the service mesh on top of that to allow you to both federate and to split up traffic, to do things like canary updates of your applications if you're doing testing, and also for failovers. And then we got an app-centric view for developers, and this is our application orchestration layer. And then we want to fully configure these to use the best of the services that are in the data fabric, including Cloud Volumes. And all of this will be available on HCI, because HCI will just become another cloud region.
So it said HCI and storage systems, so supporting the entire traditional portfolio?
So to begin with, it's HCI and SolidFire. So if I deploy a cloud volume on HCI, it'll be an iSCSI one to begin with. We also have ONTAP Select. And so we either will use ONTAP Select to do the rest of the file-based services, or potentially we could point it to an existing ONTAP cluster within. So that's kind of some of the design decisions we're talking about now. And we're definitely feeling the pressure from the
I think you're making
people.
Services so easy to consume,
yeah,
so easily reachable. You make your traditional products look very difficult in comparison.
Well, I mean, it's extreme standardization. So it won't work for everybody in every use case, right? But when you do the standardization, and we use the intelligence from ActiveIQ actually to make decisions on how we configure stuff. Because we've run through a lot of analytics with ActiveIQ, and we found out that there are over 50,000 ways to configure ONTAP, for example. I mean, it's extremely tunable, right? To do these things, you might not need to tune that much. And actually, with the all-flash product line, we actually found that like the support tickets and everything have been going down because it's actually a little bit less complex and not the same problems that you're running into. But also through ActiveIQ, we figured out what are the configuration options we should definitely not turn on. and obviously we write articles and stuff about that, but we definitely use that to try and minimize the configuration options so that we can consistently provide services on top of your on-premises. That doesn't mean we'll necessarily have an SLA on your on-premise gear, but we have SLAs in the public cloud.
Now this region in my data center, I'm only going to be able to deploy these NetApp services initially, but is that going to be extended as well to have other services that you would normally have in the cloud?
Yeah, so any of the services that run on top of what we call the service delivery engine, that includes cloud volumes, cloud backup, cloud insights, that will be very, very easily deployable to your HCI region. And this might become also the default or the easiest way to install third-party applications.
Yeah, but does this become the next Snowball Edge or Azure Stack?
So we're actually working with Microsoft, and I wouldn't be surprised if we offer something that's related to Azure products on-prem.
Interesting, because the possibilities are kind of endless in that.
Yeah,
hardware arrives with an agent that you connect and it's deployed.
So exactly. So the first step is just getting that delivery engine on there, and then the sky is really the limit. And not just for us, but for the companies that start using this, because I can tell you, like, how long of a time does it take to set up a private cloud, tune it, control the access to it, give people credentials to use, and then like teach everybody how to use everything. Like
Well, I know companies have been at it for 3 years, haven't gotten to that last stage of letting users at it. So.
Yep.
Yeah, I know customers that have had projects ongoing for 3-5 years and still not at that point of outside of dev, test, UAT, and production's still traditional. So.
Yep. We're trying to leapfrog some of the problems that you would have if you were going just a pure VM way or a pure bare metal way, because we think that eventually the VM technologies will also be integrated into what we're doing right now, and so eventually we'll have both things in there, both containerized and actually sort of light VM based pods. Where you will be sharing the networking with the pods and have a singular solution that doesn't need everybody to be, fidgeting with switches and configurations that might easily break. So we talked about marketplace. Here we have our what we call our trusted charts, but we don't necessarily, because we're not just targeting companies that just want these marketplace applications. You can also create your own, and actually built into this is the possibility of creating your own application packages. So you just need to provide us with like for example, a singular container image and tell us what port you want to have open, and we'll create an application package for you that you can then download and use as a distribution model. So you can use this to develop your own solutions that you then deliver to other places.
Templates, and within that template, you can point to the Puppet master and download everything you need.
Is this like a private container registry? Is that what you'd call this? Or
so it supports both private and public container registries, or we call it, well, for Kubernetes, the distribution package format that most people use is called Helm charts. So effectively, these here are Helm charts, but the operation up here, which is actually just hidden, this allows you to create a Helm chart from just a simple description of what you're trying to build. And so the application orchestration layer is actually almost probably as big of a feature as the whole cluster management, because here we take an application-centric view on Kubernetes and actually make it a lot easier for developers to use and actually operators to use too. Here for example,
drive to get you to see how it fits with more of the NetApp portfolio ahead of other methodology to do it.
So you don't have to use the NetApp stuff in here if you just want to use Kubernetes things. But if you do, it's going to be way better for you because, for example, here digging into an application. This application has some auto-scaling rules to it. So with a combination of NKS and application-based auto-scaling, we can both have the cluster grow and shrink and the application grow and shrink.
Yeah.
And if you connect this to Cloud Insights, the scaling might be happening on a completely different level. You might be changing the service level for the cloud volume, which you can do in real time and up the actual throughput of the volume. You might be scaling the application or moving it to a different cluster based on Cloud Insights about your application.
Yeah.
Or you might be making your database bigger because you're not handling enough transactions.
Yeah, I get all of that. It's kind of it does the speed part of the cloud really well. It's that flexibility part where it's kind of been restrictive is kind of what I'm getting at.
So what do you think is restrictive?
You end up with a less flexible option because you kind of have to now stick with the use of this as your cloud orchestration area.
So not at all, because even if you have this option here, this is our sort of opinionated view on top of Kubernetes. You still have kube control or kubectl, the command line tools.
Yeah.
It is unchanged Kubernetes. We're not doing like OpenShift. Like this is actual, upstream Kubernetes, and we allow you to upgrade to the newest version of Kubernetes probably within 4 or 5 days from a new release. And we handle the upgrade process for you. In addition to that, we have a way to use access control to allow you to jump to the standard Kubernetes dashboard if you want to use that as your UI. So there's actually nothing that ties you into this UI. Remember, this is just stateless, but what this gives you is actually real-time updates, real-time health checks, real-time Cloud Insights that can actually help your app, and the cloud volumes to give you the performance and movability and backup capabilities. So one of the things that we want to do here is actually implement something that hasn't been implemented in the public cloud yet, which is consistent application snapshots and backups. So what I mean by that is an application of a snapshot or backup of your full application, including the database, including the application layer, including the configuration of the application, everything so that you can actually take this application and then restore it to another cluster somewhere else. And this has not been done before, but simply because if you try to do something like let's say you want to snapshot an EBS volume, that takes time to copy over to S3. With NetApp Cloud Volumes, that happens instantly. So the only thing we have to add to this secret sauce is actually the quiescing of things like databases, which we already have the IP for in Snap Center. And then we've got application snapshots that are better than anything else that is out there, whether it's on-prem or in public cloud. We want to go one step further, and what if we can get the data to the application through a workflow?
Yeah.
And that's what we call fabric flows. And instead of showing you this, let me actually show you a demo. So we've been working hard on fabric flows, and let me see. Hopefully this doesn't break. I'm praying to the demo gods right now. But so fabric flows are a way for anybody on your team, whether it's a cloud architect, developer, or a storage admin, to actually make things happen within a data fabric when something interesting in the world happens, and vice versa. So you can imagine there are multiple use cases. One would be, okay, I need to get data from point A to point B, but I maybe want to do it every time somebody logs into my system. I want to maybe preheat a volume that's going to be used in location A or location B, and so it's ready, and follow the sun. Do something like that. So imagine not just taking data, shaping data, and cleaning data like you would do for data science, but also bring data to where it needs to be, when it needs to be there, and using the features of the data fabric and the services. And so I made our team here, we made a simple workflow. Actually, I have multiple workflows here, but most of these are just doing, creating cloud volumes and doing snapshots and things like that. But in this workflow here, I took the aspect of a data scientist, or actually a developer or somebody actually learning data science and how to develop on data science, data sets. So one of the sort of greatest source of data sets for machine learning and other data science exploration is Kaggle. So Kaggle.com, log into that, it's free. You can download 11,600 data sets. However, these things are stored in S3. You have to go through the UI here or through the API to get a download link to S3. And actually, to consume this, you would normally instantiate an EC2 instance, and then you would install the S3 tools. You would, it's a lot of steps just to get the data on top of that EC2 instance so you can actually start working with it. But what if you had a workflow engine that actually knows how to talk to Kubernetes, can talk to any Kubernetes cluster, including the one that's built into your data fabric, and then it can create cloud volumes because it knows how to talk to cloud volumes, and it actually knows how to create a job within Kubernetes to populate that cloud volume with any data set that I want from Kaggle. And that's what we did. So here I have a create cloud volume node. We call these nodes. And I'm going to create a volume called the cloud experience. I'll just call it cloud experience. It gets a generated export path. This is just like a haiku generator. The next thing I do a Kubernetes thing, which is persistent volume. So Kubernetes needs something called a persistent volume. It's just a representation of the volume within Kubernetes. And this is going to be NFS. And then the green ones are just debugs. So it's just so I can show you some information here in the debug window. So what happens here is that anything that happens in a node, it passes on the information to the next node. So this is sort of linear. This also means that if I have an example like I do here, where I have a node that has two inputs, nothing will happen here until both arrive at that point.
Sort of like a batch data flow kind of solution? I mean...
Yeah, so it's actually more than that, because if I wanted to turn this into a web service, I can simply drag and drop the HTTP web service node on there. And then I can make all of this into a web service. So the possibilities here are pretty crazy, because once you have the basics in here, and you could add your own, because we were actually using open source projects to actually put all of this together, and our IP of having it talk to Kubernetes and work on Kubernetes. But once you create your nodes, they can then start to interact with all sorts of different services. Originally, this framework that we were using here was built for IoT. So there's a lot of IoT functions in here, message queue stuff. There's even there are available nodes to control Amazon, Google Cloud instances, even Watson services. So anyway, let's populate this volume. So the only thing I have to do here is select my data set. So I open up the Kaggle mount node. And I can select from a number of data sets here. So I'm just going to pick the Honeybee annotated images one. And to run this, I actually deploy it. And deploying it means that it's actually running an instance or a job in Kubernetes. And then to trigger it, I have a button here. Obviously, this could be triggered by anything. I could send myself a tweet or send a DM to an account that triggers this, or I can do it in a Slack channel, something like that. But now I'm just going to click Create. What it does is it starts to create the cloud volume, and I actually have a login here into my development environment for cloud volumes. Let's take a look at that. And I've actually created the volume here. It was too quick. So in the output for this create PV, I actually see the volume now. So there's a persistent volume claim. Here's the NFS export path to that, and I can see the same here over in Cloud Experience. So if I wanted to mount this volume to a VM, I can do that too through the UI, because it gives me a simple way of seeing that. And now it's created the job that I wanted to run, and it's actually running the job. And I can see what the job is called here for Kubernetes. And so the next thing I'm going to do, I could do this whole thing through this UI, but I want to show you what I would do to communicate with Kubernetes here. So first, this actually allows me to log into my master node. Just a small script that I wrote here. And so now I can do kube control, get jobs, or actually get pods. Well, I can get jobs too. Just to show you, I've run a few jobs here, and they've all been successful, it seems. But I want to get the pod because I want to actually take a look at the logs that were created for this. So I'm just going to use the name of the thing, the job here. So here's my pod. It's already completed. But since this was a Kubernetes job, I can actually look at the logs for that. So let me take a look at the logs. And now I see that my workflow here, the Fabric flow, has actually created this job. That instantiated a downloader for Kaggle. And it saved it to a certain location. And now if I wanted to use that, I could just either use my public cloud API for Cloud Volumes, or I can use the interface here. And so I copy paste these commands. And let me actually just sudo here. Oh, that's sudo. Yeah. And now that I take a look at
it's always better
volume,
if you spell it right.
I have my cloud volume, and I have my data science data set there to start working on. And then you can start tying this. You can imagine like how you could tie this into other different workflows.
So effectively there, you created a cloud volume, you went to Kaggle, you mounted an S3 bucket, and you copied the bucket to the cloud volume.
So I managed to skip the whole part with managing the VMs and all that because I used my Kubernetes cluster. I created a simple job based on a container. The container's only job, because you can separate things in the workflow into the smallest units you can do. The container only used my credentials that I set in my Kaggle mount node here. Mm-hmm. I set my access control here. It used Kaggle's API to actually fetch the data set directly into the cloud volume. And then the job ended. So now nothing's running in the compute. There's no waste. I've gotten the data to my cloud volume, and then I shut the compute, so to speak, off.
So, but you actually did reference it, S3 data.
Yeah. I pulled it from S3 directly into the cloud volume.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's. I think we're actually out of time, are we? Remember, this was a prototype, but yeah, I just wanted to show you a little bit of an update, what we're doing, and what sort of possibilities we think we can
what else? I mean,
get to.
I like that demo. It all worked, which was really cool.
Yeah.
What else do you envision your customers using Fabric flows for?
So I think Fabric flows, I mean, you may be familiar with WFA. So those are sort of the scripting flows. So this is kind of like the cloud version of that. because now we can talk to any API really. There are literally hundreds of types of nodes already. For this, we're actually, I'll just tell you the name of it. We're using a platform called Node-RED as the basis, but we've added a lot of things to it to be able to run it within Kubernetes and sort of use it more as a sort of like a business process management workflow rather than just IoT workflow. So the possibilities are really endless. Like it's really an open platform to wire things together. It was built for IoT originally, but we think we can use it now on the data fabric to wire things together. And I like to say, do things when interesting things in the world happen.
How does it coordinate across multiple fabric flows operating at the same time?
Yeah, so you can actually internalize flows. So when you finish creating a flow, you are basically creating a catalog. So now you can use that flow just like a piece of software that you can use in other flows. Yeah, but, and it's one instance of the flow.
Yeah, but I could have different instances of different flows operating concurrently in my Kubernetes cluster. I mean, it's fairly, potential is fairly high, actually.
Yeah, so
I mean, IoT, I've got different data flows from multiple sensors coming in. I want to do different things with them. Yeah. I could effectively implement all this through fabric flows?
Technically, yeah. So one of the things, like one of the reasoning why we started thinking about this was actually because there's a reason why we have 50,000 configuration options for ONTAP. It's because we do what customers ask us to do, right? So now we can, obviously help customers achieve their goals, but now also customers can do a lot of things without us. And I think that's really the powerful thing about fabric flows. It will allow you to do things that you want to do in an automated way, but you won't necessarily get us to program that into all of our systems for you.
And you said all of this is consumed by going to cloud.netapp.com?
Yeah. So it's this. Some of the services in here are already released as standard services.
And some.
So, for example,
But that's one of my point is that you were saying that it's compared to your other products, this looks pretty difficult. But as soon as you said that, I remember George saying the target for us is to have this cloud business to be in recurring revenue, $400 million. And so that's a great way of doing it, is making this silly easy. Yeah, I was going to use a different word, but
well, it's the standardization and the API. Like really, it's the APIs that allow us to do something like this. So if it's got an API, we can automate it, or you can automate it. And then lastly, Cloud Insights. Here we have sort of part of Cloud Insights integrated into the Cloud Orchestrator, but again, this might not be the case when we release the Cloud Orchestrator because it's actually it's a full screen application, like we call it, and it has lots of bells and whistles on its own. And then there's the labeling feature.
Question around Cloud Insight. If I have my data fabric and I get reports from Cloud Insight, how do I get that? How does it translate in terms of costs? Do I have to pay separate for Cloud Insight and for the data fabric services, or is that all integrated?
Can you repeat that? I'm not sure I understood.
Yeah, you are getting reports from Cloud Insights here, which are showing up there.
Yep.
Is that an extra paid service, or is that integrated in whatever you offer?
Yeah, so Cloud Insights is a freemium model. So what we would show here, if it was this fully integrated, would be the freemium version of that. Okay. And then it will point out places in your fabric where you would actually gain some insights by enabling the sort of full version. Okay. But it's kind of like it's consume, like pay for what you consume model.
And to that, then there's a question which ties to this. How do I get started? Do I register and put a credit card number and start going, or do I need to go to my reseller or?
Right. It's basically give us a credit card, or in some cases it's give the cloud provider the credit card. Yeah.
Thank you.
Is this something that partners will be able to utilize?
Yes. Everything that we're doing in cloud is partner friendly and reseller friendly too.